What's good, my friend? Welcome to another video. If we haven't met yet, my name is Ted and I talk bass. Listen, welcome to 2023. Today, I want to share some tips that are just on my heart for the new year and maybe a little bit different than what you might expect. But let's get into it. Oh, also, today, if I've timed everything right, I got a new single out on Spotify. If you check Brother Theodore, on Spotify. The single is called Angels. Anyway, let's get into it. At the end of a year, like everybody else, or like most people, I reflect on the year. This year has been particularly tough for me for several reasons, but as we should, I think, looking into the new year, we reflect and we figure out, what are we going to do differently. And so with that, these things popped into my mind that I wanted to share with my fellow musicians. So tip number one is make a will. I know that is not what you expected to see on a channel about bass and music and all that stuff, but I made my first will in 2020, and what I realized from that, and I have updated my will just about every 6 or 8 months since then. And that may seem a little bit extreme, but one of the benefits of that is that it has forced me to look at my life in a different way. Like, just like middle age will do, will look, have you look at your life in a different way, look at your assets, your liabilities, things that you want to leave behind, your final wishes, all of that. Now, most of you know I don't have children, but I do have people that I love and that I care about. I have, instruments and writings and all these things, and I would want to leave some direction for folks in the time of my passing, and that's going to come for everybody. And so I don't care if you're 19 or if you're 50. Overall, I find that this exercise can really help you to take a look, take stock in your life and reevaluate some goals and things like that. So let's get into number 2, which is get a day job. Listen, there is no shame in having a day job. What we learned, or what we should have learned from 2020, is that the gigs end. They can end at any moment, and when they end, it is fast and furious. Remember when it was supposed to be 2 weeks, and then it became 18 months, and some folks have still not gotten back to the level of gigging that they had before. Things change, time marches on, and so it's okay to have a day job, and it's okay to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. It's okay. That's the world that we live in. Had I not been a teacher at the time, I would have had to work. I would have had to do something because the bills didn't stop coming, right? But it would have been something that I definitely did not want to do. So there is no shame in having a day job. That is a place where, depending on what you do, find something like I said, I was a music teacher for a long time, but in being a music teacher, I just, I was able to bring together tech skills and things like that I had learned along the way as a creative. Right now, I'm no longer teaching, but working in the educational technology space. So, all these things are kind of swirling around in the same ecosystem, and thankfully have helped me to stay afloat as life changes. And truth be told, when you get to a certain point in your life, you ain't gonna want to do it like you're doing it now. If you're in your 20s or something like that, and you're out there just going hard at it, that time will, it'll come to a point where you're just like, oh man, I don't want to do it like this anymore. I don't want to load gear. I don't want to blah, 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 blah. And, the truth of the matter is that the millionaire bass player, those days are over unless you're doing, you got plan A, B, Adam Blackstone, he's not just a bass player. He does all these other things. So while you're young, if you, can get some mentorship and invest in those skills or whatever, I highly suggest that. The next tip I have is in line with that whole thing about getting a day job, and that is to pay yourself first. Listen, I spent my 20s like working in like manual labor, right? Before I even entered into a space of being a full-time musician, I was doing manual labor, and I had this kind of give it to me now mindset, right? If I could go back, I would listen to this advice that somebody actually had given me at some point, and that is pay yourself first. If you're fortunate enough to have a job that has a 401k or something like that, invest in that. Put aside that money, and if they have a match, get in there and get that. It's free money, right? And you're gonna need, at some point in your life, you're gonna need every dime you can get your hand on. That's just the world we live in right now, an ever-changing, increasingly volatile world that we live in. We just need to be a little cognizant of that. I think that it is irresponsible. When you hear people talk about, I just had plan A and I just did this and I did this, you notice that they share this information after they have made it, right? We don't necessarily have that luxury, right? We need to have multiple income streams, different skill sets and things like that. But in terms of paying yourself first, if let's say you're only gigging right now, you make you have a gig that pays, I don't know, $1.50, think about it. Maybe you can't do it all the time, but save a nickel for every dollar that you make, right? Or save a dime, the next gig you have, save a dime for every dollar that you make. Save a quarter for every dollar that you make, and just put that money aside, right? The problem with a lot of gigs, especially when the gigs pay cash, is when you've got cash on hand, it evaporates so fast. You know what I'm saying? So don't take it. Don't take my word for it. Do with this information what you will, but I really think that it's important that you pay yourself first. The next bit of advice that I have is for you to insure your gear. I have talked about it before. I am not sponsored by Music Pro Insurance at all, but I will leave a link down in the comments in the description section. Crime is growing. It's not getting better, it's getting worse, right? I'm intimately familiar with both New Orleans and the Bay Area, and when I hear a musician say, well, my gear got stolen overnight because I didn't bring it in the house, or I went in the store for 15 minutes and left my guitar sitting on the I'm like, when you know better, you do better. The end. I don't know why we're even getting into that. And I'll be honest with you, I've seen some of these GoFundMe posts and things like that where I'm like, you're committing what is essentially insurance fraud, because I know your shit didn't get stolen. I believe you're trying to get some new gear. And that's horrible, right? Now, before you get at me in the comments, just understand that if I throw a ton of rocks into a yard full of dogs, only the ones that get hit will holler. All right, that's some old country wisdom. I know some of y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Some of the OGs comment below. You know what I'm talking about. So, insure your gear, man. Some of y'all spend more money on weed annually, and that's no judgment. You do what you do. No judgment whatsoever. But budget it in, man. Budget it in. I spend maybe around $200 to insure all of my gear. One of those guitars gets stolen, gets broken or something like that, I'll file a claim. I'll get a new guitar. Music Pro is fantastic. They are fantastic. But knock on wood, hopefully that never happens. Those are just some things that were on my mind this morning. Like I said, right at the turn of a year, I think is a reflective time, and you look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and what you want to do better. I'm not talking new year, new me type stuff. I'm just talking about, evaluating, taking stock, taking inventory, And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And so thanks for riding with me. I know I don't put out as much content as I used to, but I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. Two fingers.